Hello everyone, I'm Mabube. I'm one of the webinar coordinators of this network. Today I'm joined by Dr. Chris Haswell. He completed his PhD at the University of Sheffield and currently he is an associate professor at Kyushu University. Chris, could you please introduce yourself?
Yes, hello, and thank you for inviting me to join this series.
Thank you
I've
for your
enjoyed
time.
watching the other videos.
Thank you.
Yes, as noted, I'm originally from the UK. I've been living in Japan now for about 20 years, all of the time in Kyushu. So I started in Miyazaki, moved to Kagoshima, and then started teaching at universities at Ritsumeikan Asia Pacific University in Oita. I was there for 7 years, and I moved to Fukuoka to move to Fukuoka University. I worked there first, and subsequent to that, I worked at Seinan Gakuin University, and now here at Kyushu University.
Okay, thank you so much. Your PhD dissertation was a great inspiration for me when I was doing my PhD at Osaka University. Could you please talk about your PhD research? So it was, the title was Asian Students of English at an International University in Japan, a study of attitudes to the use and study of English. Could you please talk about your PhD dissertation?
Yeah, the dissertation came about based on the location where I was working at the time. So Ritsumeikan Asia Pacific University is a unique university in Japan. About 50% of the students come from outside of the country. And to put that into perspective, I think the average for most universities is somewhere around less than 5%. I know that Kyushu University is just over 10% at the moment, but 50% is very high.
Yeah.
And 85% of the faculty either were non-Japanese or received their final qualification from a non-Japanese university. So it was a highly internationalized environment.
Yeah.
I was interested in finding out how the students of the main populations, so the Japanese, Korean, and Chinese students, how their attitude towards the use of English was changed by their interactions with mainly non-first language users of the language. So in their home countries, they may have learned and been told that they were learning an American version of English, or depending on their teacher, they might have studied a British variety of English, but the varieties of English that they were interacting with every day in their classes, on the campus, even in their dormitories, would not be varieties of English that they had had much experience with. So I compared the students at the university to other non-internationalized universities in Japan and in Korea and in China, and found that while all the students were cognizant of varieties of English, it was really only the students at Ritsumeikan APU that had any concrete real life experience of it. And it was causing them one of two, or one or both effects. It was giving them greater practice and much more practical examples of the varieties of English that they're probably going to be interacting with in their future careers, more so than people from the UK or people from America. But also they were gaining more concrete pejorative views of the different varieties of English, which they could name. So while the students in Korea and China and non-internationalized universities in Japan, while they could talk about the concept of varieties of English, the students at APU would say directly Korean English or Chinese English or Indian English or Philippine English. My professor is from such and such a place. My professor comes from India, and this is causing me a problem in the class. And so they were getting experiences that I felt the university wasn't doing enough to assist the students in making English this real second language. It wasn't helping them get over some of the obstacles that they were experiencing.
That's very interesting. I actually attended a webinar recently, NAFSA's webinar, and the Dean of APU was talking about the current situation because, you know, when you have lots of international students and suddenly this travel ban because of this virus happened, so they faced a huge challenge compared to other universities that they do not have, you know, as many international students as they have. And he talked about a lot of alternatives for rethinking about other, you know, new ways for creating mobility for international students.
Mm.
Yeah, so I think they're currently conducting classes on Zoom, as he mentioned. And yeah, the current situation, I think, is changing a lot of different aspects in terms of mobility. And I think it would be interesting to see the future of, for example, APU or internationalized universities like APU, how they are going to deal with the post-COVID situation.
Well, that's one of the points because student mobility is one of the three main pillars of the Department of Education's internationalization policy. So they basically defined what internationalization was going to be, would be an increased use of English on campus by both students and faculty, an increase in the number of international faculty, non-Japanese faculty, and also an increase in student mobility through encouraging connections between universities. And if that third pillar becomes less stable or not something that they can plan for over the next 2, 5, 10 years, then that's going to require quite a large rethinking of policy at the government level when it comes to internationalization.
Right, thank you. And about your current research, could you please tell us about what research projects you are doing at the moment, or the recent research projects that you have just completed?
The project that I've just completed was a 3-year project into the employment of international students as teaching assistants at both Kyushu University and at Ritsumeikan APU. The reason why this came to me as an idea was the end of my PhD was the conclusion was that the universities weren't doing enough to mitigate some of these negative opinions that students can have or can pick up when they study in a highly internationalized environment. And when I worked at APU, I was the coordinator of the teaching assistant program for the English department. And I noticed that the majority of our teaching assistants were non-Japanese, but highly proficient in English. And they acted as this bridge in the class between the teacher and the students. But they were also a kind of a role model, a model student of someone who was using English as maybe their second or even their third or fourth language, but that they had progressed to a proficient, able to assist others with their studies. And I saw that as being a useful model of most of them were non-first language users, but they were proficient enough to perform this role. So for the last 3 years, I've been interviewing both international students as teaching assistants and the faculty at APU, where they are actually integrated into the language program, and found that unlike what my expectations were, the students were, the teaching assistants really wanted to learn concrete skills, for example, teaching, but also transferable skills for in their postgraduate employment. But that the Kyushu University students seemed to be more interested in the professional side of it and were more likely to mention professional positives. The students who gave me the most recommendations came from APU. I think maybe because they're more integrated into the class, they get more of a classroom experience, so they get more of the ways that the program could be improved. I was also interested to speak to the teachers because I wanted to know how they use them in their classes. So at Kyushu University, teaching assistants tend not to take much part in the teaching. They do administrative tasks mainly. And if they don't work in our self-access learning center, then they don't have a lot of interaction with the students. But in APU, the teaching assistants are often included in the lesson plans, and I wanted to learn more about what TAs could do. This was quite fortuitous because Kyushu University changed their teaching assistant policy recently and broke the teaching assistants into 3 different categories. So you'd have a basic teaching assistant, and this would be the usual administrative tasks. An advanced teaching assistant who would have some experience of the class and would be able to assist students with in-class activities, because they would have, maybe they were graduates of that class, or maybe they had been a TA in that class before, so they would have gained more training. And then there was the 3rd category, the highest category, that were called teaching fellows. And this would be linked to our future faculty program, where we try to identify which of our graduate students might become faculty after they graduate from their doctorate. So this would actually give them a chance to teach some elements of the class. And at the end of last year, just before everything got shut down, I was approached by our dean to come up with a training policy, a training course, and then a guidebook of policies for our English courses to use these teaching fellows as part of the new curriculum starting next year. So that's something that I'm working on at the end of this project. So the research has been finished, but it's actually led to some positive real world conditions where hopefully I can put some of my recommendations from the research into the policies of the new curriculum.
Yeah, thank you. That is really interesting. At Osaka University, we had a similar system. As you said, we had 3 different categories for TAs, and we had TF as the final category. And I did some TF work at Osaka University, and depending on the professor, my duties were really, really different. I was thinking that that one also can be interesting because, for example, one professor really let me to be involved in, for example, designing the classroom curriculum and answering students' email. The other one, for example, everything has been really settled. So I really didn't have enough room for, giving my own opinion. So I think that one also is interesting to see, depending on different professors and depending on how much they can let the TFs to be involved in this process.
Well, that's why policy and training is so important, because one of the big conclusions that I came from the first round of interviews, I did 2 rounds of interviews with the teaching assistants, and the first round of interviews was the stress that was caused for the TAs. It wasn't when they were asked to do too much, and it wasn't when they were asked to do too little. In both situations, they could handle it. It was when it was the difference between the teachers and not knowing when you went into a course what the teacher was going to expect you. So the difference between teachers was causing them a bit of stress, because there's an expectation of, should I be doing more? Should I be interjecting into the class more? Should I be doing less? Should I be not giving my opinion so often? And so if there isn't a good communication between the teacher and the teaching assistant, then this tension can lead to people not enjoying their role. So this is part of, and the training is often there so that the teacher has confidence that they can give some of the classroom tasks to the TA, and that they have been trained and prepared. And the more that there is a trust that's built between the teacher and the teaching assistant, the more they can get out of the class. Like the teacher will be able to do more in the class because they can give some responsibilities. The teaching assistant will learn more and gain more skills and confidence as well. And again, the students get to see a productive, professional dynamic between 2 people, one person in the position of responsibility and one person assisting them, but that the assistant is also a positive role model for the students as well. So hopefully we can come up with policies and training that affect that kind of change.
Thank you. These classes, what kind of classes were they? All of the different classes, or only language classes, English language classes?
The teaching fellows were going to be used in all range of classes. I'm only involved in the language side of it, but of course, all the other faculties, there's 27 other colleges in the university. So 27, it's around about that.
Mm-hmm.
And each one will have a different policy. And of course, because each college is looking for different things in their future faculty, whether it's just materials knowledge or teaching ability or the ability to write successful research grant applications. These are all, each college will need to find exactly what kind of faculty they want to build, and then you know, select their applicants accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
And the other projects that I've just started is an audio journal project called Lost in Citations with two of my colleagues. And so we've set up the ability, I mean, we started it by interviewing people who we were interested in, very similar to what you're doing in this project here, but we did it in the form of a podcast. And as we have developed it over the last few months, we decided that we'd open it up to other people if they wanted to use the platform to reach out and interview professors and researchers who have produced interesting works, and then submit it to us for us to maybe edit and then put out as a series of interviews that were sourced by independent researchers. A lot of the time, research projects take so long, and it can be quite dehumanizing, especially when you're reading the words of somebody and you're not hearing them explain it. So we've started a project where academics at all levels of their professional career could select someone whose work has interested them, interview them either directly or by Skype, and then submit the audio for us to publish in our online sources and put out as a series of podcast interviews. So that's one of the things that I'm doing from now to try and increase the connectivity of the network of researchers, because sometimes we can feel quite lonely, and the more we can bring researchers together and hear each other's voices, I think the more that we can feel as that we're a team rather than individuals.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just about to ask about this, and I found it really, really interesting because, as you mentioned, we usually just read the words of the scholars, and it is really interesting to, you know, get to know more about these scholars and about their research work. Thank you so much. I think I'm going to add the link to this website in the caption so that our audience can be able to also reach out to the website. Thank you so much for your time today. Is there anything else you would like to mention about your PhD research, about any of your works that you are doing at the moment?
I would just add that if anyone's in the middle of their PhD now, and particularly if you're having to learn new ways of teaching, and if you're stuck at home, or you are just generally feeling in your work, or you're losing that motivation, just know that everyone who's gone through a PhD has gone through these periods. Reach out, find somebody, or find a group such as what you're doing here or what we're doing, and you will find someone out there who will give you that energy to move through those difficult times. I mean, it took me a better part of 10 years to complete my PhD. I think by the time from starting the application process to actually finishing it, I think in total was 9 years, because I did it through distance learning, whilst working full time, and then, you know, changing my job 3 or 4 times and getting married and having a couple of children, and you really change during that period, and everyone's gone through it. It doesn't make it any easier, but trust me, there are people out there who can give you their advice or will listen to your problems, and you'll make it. You'll get there. Trust me.
Thank you so much for your time, and that was actually a great takeaway message. Thank you so much, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Good luck with your work.
Thank you.
Good luck with it all.